So Pete Holmes loves Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, but particularly is fascinated by Ben Affleck. And I guess because of some of the Batman stuff as well, like Ben Affleck is just one of those people that is absolutely on his radar. And of course, we forget that Kevin Smith was like a co-executive producer on Good Will Hunting. Like he was the first person.
They were BFFs. They were like they were in the late 90s. I remember, and I've been trying to find this clip on YouTube. They presented an award at like the MTV Movie Awards. It was Kevin Smith and Ben Affleck, and the joke of the bit, their banter, was that they said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Ben Affleck and Matt Damon," and out comes like little schlubby Kevin Smith. And Ben Affleck's like, "What the hell's going on? Where's Matt?" And he's like, "No, it's me. It's Matt. I'm your best mate, Matt." And Ben's like, "You're not Matt. This is ridiculous. No one's buying this." And Kevin's like, "Well, we need to do something. We need to do something to get people's attention." So Ben Affleck grabs him and fully pashes him on the lips. And it was like such a great bit. And I always remembered it because I'm like, "Oh, those two look like best friends. Like you can only do that with your best friend." But then I never saw it again.
Well, as Kevin Smith says, the first person who cast him in a lead, the first person who took him from being the sort of bad boy in movies to being like a romantic
leading man. Yeah,
he lives, of course, has lived for the last 20 years in a house he bought from Ben Affleck. So
yeah, but he sold I know this story too. He sold to him for a really good price.
So that's the icing. You would have heard that story before. He lived in it until he could afford it. You would have heard that one before.
Yeah, that's right.
So. Are they still friends is the question. And the answer to this question also comes straight into the Tofop world and answers a question that we posed on this very podcast a few weeks ago. So I ask you the question, are Ben Affleck and Kevin Smith still friends? So answer that first. Do you believe they're still friends? Yes. And what is the proof that they are still friends?
Well, when he did the Jane Silent Bob reboot, he reached out to Ben. He texted a number that he wasn't even sure was still Ben. I know this story was still Ben's.
Okay, so that is a story you know, but I'm going to cut you off because that is not the story. Think more recent. What's something that's happened in Ben Affleck?
Oh, he got invited to J-Lo's wedding.
He got invited to Ben Affleck and J-Lo's wedding.
That's a step up. That's a real step up because apparently Kevin Smith, Jennifer Garner was not a fan of Kevin Smith. He talked about that quite openly, that when Ben was married to Jennifer Garner, she did not like the cut of his jib, didn't like the way Kevin spoke to him, didn't like their kind of banter. And he felt like she sort of advised Ben, you know, if you want to be taken seriously, you got to move away from that dude from Jersey.
That guy in the jorts.
The jorts not good and the hockey jersey.
Just like outside
you could be an Oscar-winning director.
Yeah, there's a big red circle with a line through it and some jorts that Jennifer just put up one day. No hockey jerseys in this house. I'm not saying Kevin can't come over. I'm just banning jorts and hockey jerseys from the house. So if Kevin wants to come over, he can still come over.
So did he talk about the wedding itself?
So he didn't.
Well, he would have. Didn't he? He would have cast both of them. J-Lo's in Jersey Girl.
Yes,
she's like an anonymous cameo. She's not billed. She's got a cameo, so he would know both of them. That makes sense.
Okay, so tell me this then. He did not reveal a lot from the wedding, but he did speak about something that we touched on a little bit, which was the nature of the speeches. And like whether Matt Damon, he did not reveal whether Matt Damon did a best man speech, which was very disappointing. I was like, come on, Pete, ask the question. Ask the question that we need answered. Who was the best man? Was it Casey? Was it Matt? We need to know who it was. It was not Kevin, put it that way. But he did say that Ben Affleck wrote a huge speech, like a proper, like, you know, because Kevin was talking about just like being impressed with what a great writer he was and like his performance and the way he put his words together, and apparently did this incredible. So we were talking about the idea of, do you play it down or do you lean into, you know, your skills and your chops and your idea that you are performers. So if anybody's going to nail this speech at their wedding, then it's going to be you. Well, the answer to that question is that apparently Ben had done the work.
That's interesting. I find the fact that sort of plays out in public too. Like, I think one of the great things about Kevin Smith, and even though I don't really tune in to a lot of his work anymore, you cannot fault his like honesty. The fact that he takes his audience or the public through the making of a friendship and the loss of a friendship and then the winning back of that friendship. Like, he documented all of that on social media. Like, when he revealed that Ben Affleck was going to be in Jay and Silent Bob Rebooted, he posted a photo and then wrote this really long Kevin Smith type post about, you know, how the relationship came together, then how they moved apart, and how he was, you know, felt like maybe but now his boyfriend was back. And it was just like, I mean, I guess if you're going to be a friend with him, you have to, like, his wife, for instance, must have realized early on that my vagina is going to be talked about a lot in public. Our sex life and my vagina will be a frequent topic of conversation on any form of media that he does. Like, do you remember there was an episode of Smodcast where it was a live show? It was a recording of one of their live shows. And Kevin Smith just told some story about having sex with his wife. Yeah. And then he asked Scott, had you had like a similar experience? And Scott said no. And Kevin's like, why did you ever say anything? It's like, well, because you get up on stage and say, I licked my wife's asshole. And then, you know, what am I going to say? Like, after that, there's no room for two of us to get up and start talking like that.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that specific thing, because he does talk about, because Pete references, he goes, well, you're the guy who talks about jerking off to your wife's arsehole. And he actually says, I don't anymore. She asked me not to. He goes, well, I still do it. I just don't talk about it anymore.
To see the full video, join our Patreon.
Patreon.com/Tofop.